Greetings, my name is Michael Miller. This is a Michael Miller trademark training video out to you because you're watching. Thank you and welcome. It's meant for Michael Miller Pilates licensed affiliates, licensed presenters, the Core New Core, my patrons, and anyone interested in surviving and thriving as a Pilates instructor. That was the email arriving that says I'm now live broadcasting, that you can sign up for if you wish. The funnest thing I'm doing over on Facebook that I really haven't gotten into here on YouTube is the use of my magic mirror. Because when I hold up my magic mirror and look through it, I can see who's watching. I can see who's watching. And in that, in looking through my magic mirror, I can see Jonathan, and I can see Carolina, and I can see Flavia, and I can see Patty, and I can see Samita, and I can see Millicent, and Anna. And so it was 60 years ago on a TV show called Romper Room, where the host looked through her magic mirror and claimed to be able to see us. But she never said my name. Here in technology, look where we've come. And I point to the same attraction in both cases, and that is to being observed. Right? Being observed. So, 3 things today. Not much really. A summary, go back, and if you're new and you just started here, go back at least a week and pick up on all the talk about word of mouth versus explanation. Folklore is word of mouth, and theory is explanation. And understand about 2 scoops of folklore, or a scoop of folklore and a scoop of theory, and to what extent that empowers you to survive in your pursuit of Pilates and having a sense of what it is that you're pursuing. Literally a sense, because the point of view of MMP is that Pilates is an experience. And that's over the last few days. Number 1, my title is that being able to focus is harder than ever. Being able to focus is harder than ever. Not just with channels on TV, but with streams coming across your phone and computer and all that there is. There's so much more information. And by the sheer volume of it, it compresses the amount of time you have to absorb any one particular piece. So my title about being able to focus is harder than ever is because of that. So much information in shorter and shorter amounts of time. And so one of the reasons to do Pilates is to dive into your focus in the pursuit of your performance, an ideal expression of your performance. Because from that, it's like striking a ball. You create a vibration, a resonance that lingers long after you're done striking it. Well, not long enough, obviously, because Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays is pretty good if you're not doing it every day. And Tuesday and Thursdays is a long reach for any kind of resonance in your effort to build. Personal opinion. But Pilates helps because it's an effort in focus. And in that, in your concentration and focus on whatever it is you're doing, not whatever, but your focus in what you're pursuing in your doing, that focus that you have to exercise and gardener, pull together, lingers way after you leave your workout. The fighter pilot says to me, I'm not sure, he's retired and old and small and really tight, but he's been doing Pilates and he now has all of this range, right? And so he taunts me with, I'm not sure Pilates is working. And I said, well, there's a surefire way, to figure that out. And he says, well, what? And I was looking right at him when I said, quit. Stop doing Pilates. And when he heard the word and processed what that would mean, his face just gave away the refusal of considering that as an alternative or as an answer to whether or not it's working, because it was obvious that it was. And a lot of that was because of his frequency of doing it and the time spent in the springs. I have a note to make a comment about memory, and that as an example of trying to cling to your memory or develop your memory. And I've only brushed against some of all the memory books there are about that. But to whatever extent that you do and can remember, when it comes to doing Pilates, it really helps knowing what comes next before you need to know in order to make the transition into doing it. And also in terms of the intimacy you have with your own body, mind, and spirit as a human being, that one of my points is to, when I lay across a roller, I do that to take a stretch in my neck to let the vertebrae of my neck adjust. And also what seems to happen invariably or consistently is an adjustment in my shoulder and sometimes my elbow, just one side. And the memory of knowing what it was like, at least just keeping in mind how that adjustment works into the hour ahead, or how you felt going into, for me, an intermediate reformer, is a task in memory. And you can't have the memory unless you're paying attention to what there is you're trying to remember. And in this case, I'm talking about your neck cracking, and not bad, and it just adjusting, vertebrae adjusting. And then from there, I roll up and down on my spine on the roller. But for me, the key target is to be present and paying attention and listening to when I initially start, to see how my body adjusts, to get a reading on how I am structurally, skeletally. So, memory, note taken. Number two. one of yesterday's topics was nothing compares. Nothing compares. Nothing compares to Cornu tension. Now, Cornu tension is oppositional rotation between axes in the body. That's the way the body works to move itself through space. Your understanding of that biomechanical implementation, fact, the way the body moves, the way the body engages itself, that's number 2, engages itself to move through space. So nothing compares to the insight of understanding how the body engages itself to move through space. It engages in Cornu tension. That these axes here, knees and ankles and metatarsals, okay? My chair's in the way. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In the I was going to say in the MMP point of view, but really it's just my point of view about what I'm pointing to in the body. You may want to point to other axes or other things. Okay. It's just that I came to this identification of these axes of rotation that interplay with each other. And in that oppositional rotation between axes, that creates a tension in and of itself that is eccentric in its expression. The deeper you go into this grip and the deeper you go into this grip, there's all this stuff on the outside that seeks expression or can be reached longer off of it. The idea isn't just to alright, so see the comparison? Hips to shoulders. So here are your hips. And when you engage in your grip, it's just not about your grip engaging and staying at the same place vertically in relationship to the shoulders. It's about in the grip takes you lower. It's like you don't wear waist-high jeans. The axis of rotation that's happening in your hips, is happening as low as it can, because in the grip itself, it's pressing out and away from the grip that it's going into. That sounds contradictory, but I don't think it is in a way. It's one of those subtleties about the deeper you go into your grip, the more out of it you come. And so engaging in Cornu tension between hips and shoulders is a matter of making rotation here and making rotation here, and from the rotation that you have, the tension that you place from those grips does that on your spine. It's a decompressive tension, and it's coming from oppositional rotation between axes. And it's the very same thing, of course, between ears and shoulders. It's the pursuit of this oppositional rotation that produces the most uniform engagement possible of your musculature, because it's reaching toward an ideal expression in math and physics as its means to dynamic. I don't know why that is. A lot of smart people can look at stuff. I've asked a few mathematicians to come up with an equation for core new tension. At least it's out there on a billboard. The ones that let the question still stand, looking for help describing core new tension in math. Because if you can describe a core new spiral, which I know is different in that that's about distance and whereas core new tension would be more of a measure of biomechanical engagement of your musculature and the way in which one got most uniformly engaged in their musculature. Just from the point of view that in the number 2 thing out of Joe's book, Contrology Develops the Body Uniformly, it's in the target of developing the body uniformly that you get to and need an awareness of core new tension in your pursuit of developing the body uniformly, because that's how the body does it, in my opinion. Alright, so, and that's why nothing compares. So, finishing up on I was in the number 2. The number 2, engage yourself, is referring to knowing about core new tension and letting that facilitate you in the way that you engage yourself as a human being in space to move from one place to another. To be able to engage yourself as ideally as you can by being as uniformly engaged as you can be. So I often paint the 2 spectrums of why I do Pilates. One is to survive, and the other is to dance. I was going to say joy here, and the expression of joy, it comes from dance. So to survive is the jungle, and to dance is the stage. And whether it's the jungle or the stage, it's the expression of joy that the movement is still driven by. Knowing how your body is capable of engaging itself to enhance what it's already doing primordially in your soup, and that takes me, I guess, to number 3, and I hope I do a better job on Facebook than I've done here. My apologies. Number 3, in talking about core new tension, that's a biomechanical way the body engages itself to move through space. And my claim is that I'm identifying what's already there. And it's through core new tension that you get to, or reach for, as much whole body as you can get, as much uniform engagement as you can get. Because that's what's available to you biomechanically within what you have at your disposal, meaning rotational dynamics at the axes portrayed in my trademark. The trademark is that image, but core new tension is the name of what the trademark points to. When comparing two things, Cornu applies to everybody. Everybody. Every human being. But considering that they have a body, right, is not so far-fetched. So, Cornu tension, the awareness of and the knowledge of Cornu tension, is for everybody. And no matter what way you're involved in pursuit of movement, or the facilitating of the movement of others, Cornu tension applies, because it's the way the biology accomplishes the physics. And that's a huge mountain all its own. And I claim responsibility, and I admit responsibility to the point where trademarks exist defined as the Michael Miller trademark. And you can go down on the list in my Facebook page and buy a t-shirt. More importantly, buy the app on Google Play, Reformer, Michael Miller Pilates. Buy that and back it up. Get what you can while you can, because the scope of the information I've been able to offer has already diminished considerably, and it's reasonable to expect that it will continue to diminish. Go to Zazzle.com, and what's number 3? Oh, the two mountains. Cornu tension is a big deal because it's an insight to how the body moves itself through space, engages itself through space, which was number 2. The other mountain is just one point of view out of millions of points of view. We all have our own point of view, and beyond that, it's whatever we seek to find in common or not. The MMP POV comes out of a theory that there's an ideal within Joe's original work, something that makes it what it is in and of its own right. And that you can get to whatever that is out of Joe's definition, Joe's statement about uniform usage, and the sequence, and the exercises of the sequence. My point in this broadcast is to point out to you these two enormous mountains, at least that I see. One is a way the body engages itself to move through space, which applies to everybody. And the other enormous mountain is a different way of looking at Pilates other than folklore. Now, folklore means word of mouth. And the whole culture of Pilates, by and large, is word of mouth. Word of mouth. That's what I'm saying. MMP is an enormous mountain because it steps outside of folklore and seeks to explain what's already there in Joe's book. Once seen and recognized, that gives you Joe's book and the point of view that explains what's in the book for you to compare with whatever part of folklore you are already a part of or will become part of through the pursuit of your passion. So. My closing message is be a presenter, because in terms of going from folklore to theory, that's a sharp distinction. And in that distinction is where it has its value. And so when you recognize that you have any sort of an impression that there's an explanation that can be made for Pilates, as well as something else. There's two huge mountains. But you can explain Pilates. You can explain it based on a theory that there's an essence to what it is. Based on 3 things in Joe's book. So that's the evidence that the theory works to make an explanation of. So when I look through my magic mirror again, I see. When I look through my magic mirror again, this is fascinating, because I want to look straight at what I'm used to looking at on screen, and yet if I want to look, maybe like this, there. This magic mirror is about observing. And observing in MMP is about the parts of the brain that are not the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is where all the thinking is going on. And in MMP, all that thinking gets you attempt to coordinate it with the amygdala and the hippocampal areas of the brain, which are paying attention to what's going on outside of all the thinking. And if you want to survive, that's really important. To be connected to what's going on around you. So when I hold this up, and I want to look straight at you, I'm looking at the screen, but to me, there is the center of what I'm looking at. So maybe I should always be looking at the camera instead of at myself on the screen. I'm not sure it makes that much of a difference. But if you can tell the difference in where I was looking and feel the difference more importantly, then take that as a learning example when you use your magic mirror to acknowledge those who are watching you. If you can, like you do in Facebook, that you cannot here in YouTube. All right, so be a presenter. Because that's where the value is, because there's pressure on the word of mouth and the folklore to sustain itself without being able to explain itself. And it's a catch-22. So you have to be willing to not only have, a double dip of folklore, but have a dip of folklore and a dip of theory, a dip of word of mouth, and a dip of explanation. Because as abhorrent as it might appear to be for those who are totally immersed in the culture of Pilates through folklore, that culture will always be and will always seek to maintain itself for what it is, but it won't occupy the whole spectrum. And a lot of the spectrum that's more interested in that also has, not more, but also has an interest in an explanation of why it is what it is, will have its participation within the culture as well. So be a presenter. Recognize what you know and how valuable it is. And that it's unavoidable, I think, my opinion, that Pilates is continuing to just be ground down into minutiae. And that's okay for the end of the spectrum that likes to make Pilates whatever they want to make of it, and that's okay too. And if you want to make your living based on being a Pilates instructor, and that all is just based on you, welcome to the crowd, meaning there's a lot of people that enjoy that interpretation of who they are as a Pilates instructor. In that there is nothing in and of itself to really be handing down other than the folklore, or participating in the folklore that they learned through. And today, whole continents are being inculcated to folklore ignoring and avoiding the consequences of an explanation coming to light. There's a good phrase, coming to light. Coming to light. So, life can't live forever, coming to light. Read between the lines and see behind the curtain. Know the difference between folklore and theory. And if you're going to survive, I suggest a scoop of theory will help you survive better than just relying on the culture of folklore to sustain you. And certainly being aware of theory, makes your knowledge broader than if you're not. Add two and two. See behind the curtain. Read between the lines. Connect the dots. I like that one. That's a new one that's trying to find a home and where it belongs in the sequence. But connect the dots, because if you don't, the picture doesn't emerge. And it's not until you connect the dots and the picture emerges that you're really in a position to see what your value is and to be in control of how you exchange your value for value. I mean, we all can't be Aretha Franklin in having that voice. But she set a great example by, wanting to be paid in advance, in cash, that she put in her purse on the piano or gave to her bodyguard. But she got paid before she sang. It was in the contract. And in being a presenter, which is my ending to you, be a presenter. The whole point is get paid before you make the presentation. Know how long, and then you can make up whatever you want to in that time frame, and you've already been paid, and they may or may not be happy with the presentation you made. But those that are looking for more than what they already know, not those that are trying to defend themselves, from knowing more than they already do. Being a presenter lets you make money right up front. And you don't have to promise anything other than trying to explain two things, but trying to point to the two big mountains. One identifies how the body engages itself to move through space. It uses oppositional rotation between axes to spread out the load of the body. And in doing so, creates tension between 2 points. Creates tension between 2 points, and in making that tension, alignment between the 2 points is discernible, is sensational. That's why they're two big mountains, is because both of them are experiential. Core new tension is the way you engage yourself to move through space. It's the way the body does. Whether you want to or not is up to you, but that's the biodynamics at the heart of the way you get from one place to another. That's my opinion. The cool thing is you can find out experientially, meaning for yourself, whether you can find that. And once you find that for yourself, you own it in the sense that you have direct knowledge of core new tension. Now you may be tight and stiff and have a long way to go before you're supple as a willow and can engage it like a spring. But it's there. And it's the way your body connects. How do you get from here to here? You fly the TVA. What is the TVA? It's not an airline, it's the transverse abdominis. And that's what makes the connection from the ribs into the hips. That's why you go hollow belly. You use a marble, a heavy marble, right here on the belly, so you don't have to go in there with your own hands and overload the sensation, but just the muscularity to hollow out for the marble, and yet not let your ribs pop up, is welcome to flying the TVA. Whole workshops I've seen go by on social media with just those initials, and I thought it was an airline commercial. And in a way it is. Support what supports you. If you're coming out of the woodwork and where it's been a while, and you realize that Cornu is a big part of your point of view, then I encourage you to support the projection of that point of view by being a patron, patreon.com. I mean, because that alone would try to help me keep that 24 gigabytes of information available to you and everyone. Or if you don't like doing that, just send direct support, paypal.me/michaelmillerpilates. Yes, I have a Bitcoin address, but I'm not going to recite it here. Life can't live forever. Read between the lines, see behind the curtain, add 2 and 2. Connect the dots. Evaluate points of view. And lately that's meant knowing the difference between folklore and theory. And then once you evaluate points of view, then add 2 and 2. It's easy to get a scoop of folklore anywhere, but it's really tough to get a scoop of theory that makes sense, both here and here. Direct your thinking. Geist.